dog and duck crowd. Here's some people went out to the dog and duck. I'm going to begin, and I think, well, it'll be evident that each of us has taken a very different tack in terms of what we're responding to and how we're responding. And I like the way Chris introduced it as a conversation, because I think that is really what we want to get going as a conversation. And I'm going to begin. I'll do some reading here for a few minutes. So seeing the postcard and learning the title of the exhibit, Hysterionics and the Forgotten Arm, I was immediately moved to ask the gallery to offer a conversation about the work from a psychoanalytic perspective, sight unseen, and knowing nothing of Margaret's work other than it had been accepted for a solo exhibit. When I entered the gallery to view the exhibit for the first time, two thoughts came to mind. The first, a quote from Muhammad Ali, "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee," which he used to characterize his presence in the ring. Light on his feet, smooth and gliding, beautiful as indeed he was, but with the killer bee instinct, going in for the kill, stinging with the power of a single punch. And the second thought, who is this battered woman, this battering woman? This evening I'll say a bit about the history of matters related to histrionics, hysteria, and psychoanalysis, then a bit about the historical context in which psychoanalysis, boxing, freak shows, and cabinet cards at the turn of the 19th to 20th centuries, and then a bit about my response to images of gender and aggression in the exhibit. Margaret Meehan's work, exhibited here today, entitled Hysterionics and the Forgotten Arm, begs a psychoanalytic response. For its 1895 book, Studies on Hysteria, outlined the basis of a psychoanalytic understanding of human functioning in both its mundane and most distressing forms. That there is a layer of motivation and meaning, often repeated in symptoms and patterns of behavior, but not remembered or known per se, that he termed the unconscious, and that could be accessed via the mode of free association in the context of what he called the talking cure, remembering being an essential component in that process. The wandering womb syndrome, hysteria, that's what it means from its Greek roots, is and was most frequently diagnosed in women, and not infrequently manifests itself in bodily sensations, experiences, symptoms, including historically things like limb paralyses, the forgotten arm. While early on sexual concerns and conflicts were seen as central to hysterical patterns, the role of aggression, denied, disavowed, distorted, projected, etc., that is, women on the lam, on the run from their own aggression, was integrated into a richer and deeper appreciation for the underlying dynamics in hysterical symptomatology. Arguably, the neurotic constellation most responsive to shifts in cultural and social context, hysterics know what shows will be in next season, what shoes will be in next season, what movie is a must-see, who will be covered on ET tonight. Hysteria now lives in forms like limb paralyses in remote areas of the world, while eating disorders and dissociative disorders may be the way in which it manifests itself most frequently in a milieu like ours. In a similar time frame to Freud's discovery of the unconscious, thanks to hysterics, there was Western culture-wide interest in two areas also represented in the exhibit, freaks and photography, specifically photography of two types. And these two obsessions came together in documentation of various unusual matters. The cabinet cards Margaret uses in what seems to me almost a series of mugshots of these aggressive, or are they unconscious, women, like in the large piece here, were the close relatives of carte de visite, basically postcard-sized documents of people's vacations, photos of exotic places giving way to exotic or not so exotic faces. The cabinet cards were especially prized because they could be modified and touched up. Faces were made more genteel or aristocratic, idiosyncrasies considered unattractive or deleted or, quote, corrected. Photography also became the medium, replacing portrait painting, to document freaks, aberrations in nature, captured on film. Sorry, I took some medication. I thought I'd be drowsy now. I'm sniffly, so. Photography also became the medium replacing portrait painting to document freaks, aberrations in nature captured on film, as well as captured in sideshows, carnivals, etc. Thus, photography was used to replicate what was considered frightening or abhorrent, and to reimagine, re-image the imperfect into the perfect. Another photographic obsession at the time was spirit photography, a genre represented by the work of William Mumler, for example, which was used to document the presence of ghosts, once again retouching, double exposing, etc., images in order to prove the presence of something that does not exist. This genre was particularly prevalent in the States following the Civil War, when many people wanted to contact those who had died. Similarly, Charcot and others working with hysterics at the Salpêtrière Clinic in France, where Freud trained for a time, documented the existence of hysteria, at times hypnotizing hysterical patients so that they might reproduce symptoms while in an altered state of mind, a state of mind instated by suggestion, a technique of interpersonal pressure which hysterics found particularly difficult to refuse. These hysterics and their grotesque poses were paraded out for visiting doctors to study, and their existence, the existence of these women battered by life and historical context and suggestion, were also documented in photographs. Finally, the Civil War legacy also included considerable interest in the psychological sequelae of battle, what we might now refer to as post-traumatic stress symptoms, what were then named reminiscences, vivid and at times disruptive memories of battle experiences that were frequently disruptive to the fighting men's post-war lives and often reached the level of disability. Here we have Freud's unconscious in vivo, memories of old traumatic events, their living on in symptoms and haunting ongoing life. Now back to my responses to Margaret's captivating and powerful work. I believe a great deal of what I see in the images is related to gender, and another great deal to representations of consciousness. Women as knockouts, beautiful and mesmerizing, dressed and furred in white, with white boxing gloves. At one time the gloves were called mufflers, or are they muffs, like those little girls wore in the 1950s? Or are they bandages, or the stumps of amputated limbs, forgotten arms? In vertical gowns, the brides of whom? Frankenstein's? Taking on the werewolf image and inverting it, harsh and coarse and curly hair, beards that were typically almost pubic-like, transformed into the soft and smooth and white as the driven snow purity. Yet these women also bear the arms and bear the brunt of aggression disavowed by them in all their whiteness, yet claimed. Similarly, the glitter-covered punching bag in the Victorian drawing room setting. Lights on, all the better to see you with, my dear. The glitter contrasting with the matte black walls, the dance of the ring, rope-a-dope, graceful and mannered like a Viennese waltz, choreographed but packing a wallop, delicate glass tearing into gloves, into white gloves, even into golden gloves. The stark black, white, evil, good, male, female, violent, non-violent dichotomies in all of the works pierced only by blood, and blood which is pink, feminine, not wine red. Similarly, the velvet ropes, although from the one boxing match I've attended in person, the ropes are not velvet, made soft and tied with bows, seductive in texture and tone, bows like those that tie little girls' party dresses. To move to another aspect of the pieces that I responded to particularly, Margaret has used and embellished women's faces in ways that also seem to tie into the boxing theme. Many of the women look to me to be seeing stars in altered states of consciousness, their minds, heads altered, hairy or glittery, furry or fuzzy. Are they celebrated, captured forever in photographic perfection, or trapped, photographed and then altered to comply with the other's vision? The lineup photos collected in barn burners were especially captivating to me. The third from the left image in the second row and the far right image in the third row get my votes. Finally, I was particularly taken with the wall piece, skinning the gloves. The delicacy of embellishments that Margaret applied to some of the photograph to some of the photographic images is repeated in the natural beauty of the root, the delicacy of women's work, handiwork, sewing, applied in pink to the white leather gloves. What is growing out of what? What is outgrowing what? Where do the roots become skin, the gloves become roots? And from beneath the piece, mounted like a trophy animal's head on the wall of a men's club, tiny white buttons and the black and white checkerboard of gloves and roots and gloves and roots, the roots insisting upon escaping their gloved existence. So these are my impressionistic comments on histrionics and the forgotten arm. And now Marianna Adler will offer her responses, and then we'll ask Margaret to tell us some about her process, and we'll address the discussion.